Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Leadnap Gaming. Today, we're going to talk about 3.5 in the PTU. For the most part, we're going to talk about the flight model, but I did want to take a quick moment to kind of talk about last night. With yesterday's patch, we got the new splash screen with the ArcCorp skyline. I loved the Hurston one, but man, this thing is beautiful. Also, Mobi-Glass changed. Now the buttons are kind of up on top. You can always see the currency you have. Just little things like that, you know, your O2 levels and thrust, all that good stuff. I think it's a great change. I like where they're going with that. There are some issues, though, and these are known in the Issues Council. For example, the star map. I've adjusted the sensitivity in its entirety, and it still takes forever to scroll. Obviously, you're going to see other players' names throughout. I'm not in any party in any of these shots, but some players' names show up as they're in your party all over the place. So still some issues, but it is PTU. We're talking about the beta to the alpha. So, you know, no one should get too excited there. And I think that's a great way to segue into the new flight model. I'm going to start with saying I love the new flight model. I think that it's easier to use, but it's more technical. I actually feel like I have more control than I did before on the old flight model. I know some people are going to disagree with me there. Now, at the same time, I'm only talking about the foundation, the structure of the flight model here. Yeah, there's still problems. You know, a lot of the ships, I think the thrusters on the bigger ships feel pretty appropriate, actually, to me. I think that they should be harder to maneuver and kind of be more underpowered than the massive rear main engines that the ships have. So I actually think on bigger ships, that's appropriate. Smaller ships, yeah, there's some tweaking to be had. But again, we're talking about the beta to the alpha. And this is a brand new flight model. And we're comparing it to a flight model that we've had for over a year that's had a lot of work and everything kind of fleshed out. Things like thruster, limits and values, those are all going to be fine adjustments that are made. So what I really want to talk about more is the flight model itself and not its actual individual characteristics as things are now, because those are things, we're going to get a patch today probably, and that patch today could change some of these things. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty details on, this ship's thrusters are underpowered and it's really hard to do this. I want to talk instead about the actual flight model. So I took out a Starfarer, a Caterpillar. I didn't take out the Reclaimer. That's probably the only large ship I didn't take out. I'm happy to report that the Connie, the HUD has been fixed too. That makes me really happy. But overall, when you're taking these down to land them, you feel like you have a lot more control, and it's much more... It feels right to me, I guess. That's the only way I can say it. I feel like I'm actually flying a really big ship, and I like that, because I'm not a big dog fighter. I don't fly a lot of single-seaters. Despite the fact that the 2 reviews I've done thus far are fighters, the big ships that I'm doing reviews on are just not fully there yet to really do reviews on yet. That's why. But I like the big ships. The big ships, to me, are one of my favorite parts of Star Citizen. And so now the new flight model makes flying the big ships feel like they just have a lot more mass and control to them. So I'm really a big fan of that. The controls now all being strafe controls, kind of momentary thruster controls, are awesome. And then using just the kind of dial to set your desired speed and using the cruise function to actually attain that continuous speed, and having a system that, regardless of what you're doing, tries to maintain that speed. I really appreciate, not having to disable certain piloting controls that make my ship come to a stop every time I'm going to take a turn. I hated that part of the old flight model. So with that said, I think there is some confusion or dissatisfaction by a lot of people, especially looking for that more arcadey feel. Now, anyone who's watching this knows I also make DCS content, and I really feel like the introduction of Newtonian physics into this flight model is amazing. When you're in space and you're making these turns, you're drifting because there's nothing stopping you. You know, space is a vacuum. When I make a hard bank in an aircraft in a flight simulator, I have all of that air creating friction, and the aircraft is actually pushing against the air. I mean, you know, we're getting into fluid dynamics and all that other great stuff there, but I really feel like for a space sim, this flight model, it feels like there's a difference. I'm not flying an airplane in space. I'm flying a spaceship in a vacuum, and I really like the way that that's working. Now, some observations. Thus far, one of the big things I've figured out, the space brake is now critical. Before, afterburning was really important in dogfighting and in maneuvering, but really now, to me, using the space brake properly for the right periods of time and when is really a key in kind of achieving acrobatic flight. And within an hour of, I jumped in and I got into the new flight model and I was just really confused. I was how it's all strafe. How do I do this? How do I do that? And it took me a little time to figure out, but within an hour of doing it, I was shooting an M50 at high speed through the loops. Not the highest speeds, mind you, but an appropriate 260, 300, speed through the loops at Al-Asar and whipping around other ships and stuff like that, and really not having a lot of problems with maneuvering. Now, does that mean that I can do all these awesome acrobatics like we used to be able to do in the old flight model yet? Not necessarily. And yes, the thrusters on the M50 should be a lot more powerful than they are, in my opinion, but that's all to come. I think the new flight model is fantastic, and it brings a lot to the table in that regard. Now, I'll probably end up having to do another video on the flight model towards the end of the kind of PTU phase, as a lot more of this stuff gets fixed, or maybe it doesn't get fixed. And then it's, again, worth kind of a review on that. But let's talk about it in the comments below. Do you like the new flight model? Do you not like the new flight model? Let's talk about it. Give me your thoughts. I know there are some people that are really upset. They feel like the complication of it has come out. I actually feel like the complication of it's kind of brought in a little more. But let's chat. As always, don't forget to hit subscribe, and I will catch you all next time.